All right, let's get going. Welcome, everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Shannon Gibson, and I'm the Dean of the David B. O'Malley College of Business. And as part of Homecoming Week, I am really excited to have you here for one of our Executive and Residence panels. Never before have I been so fortunate as to have 3 executives and residents here all at once. Although Barry's with us in presence, not in person, we're really excited for this opportunity. So, with that in mind, I have prepared a series of career-related, job-related questions. I'm going to first let them introduce themselves and tell you about them, and then we'll go forward with that with some time for you to ask some questions at the end. So, question number 1 for my panel, would you please introduce yourself and share just a brief amount of your bio? And we'll start to my left. We'll start with Ravi.
Thanks, Shannon. So my name is Ravi Dharnidharka. I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Cirrus Services at Cirrus Aircraft. We're an aftermarket business unit within the OEM, and we take care of all of our customers' needs. So we do flight training, we do maintenance, we do type ratings in our Vision Jet, all of those kinds of things. Before all of this, I got my start in Prescott at Embry-Riddle in the Aeronautical Sciences course. Graduated in 1998, went straight into the Marines. I had the opportunity to fly there, flew both the Harrier and the F-5 as an instructor, and then retired after 22 years between active duty and reserve service. And then along the way, worked with a couple other aerospace companies and ended up at Cirrus where I am today.
Love it. Thank you, Ravi. Candace.
Good afternoon. I'm Candace Covington. I'm currently the Senior Director of Aviation for Adobe. Aviation wasn't my first career. I actually did a career change after I had earned my private pilot's license as a hobby. I was in the graphic design industry. Enjoyed flying so much that I made a hard right turn, became a flight instructor, crewed enough time to become a professional pilot. Along the way, I was an FAA designated pilot examiner. I started a 135 charter company, a 142 training center, and but my love for flying led me to Qualcomm as a pilot, and then promoted up through the ranks, became the senior director of their flight department, and then had this amazing opportunity at Adobe to basically stand up their flight department when they were getting ready to take delivery of their first aircraft, a Gulfstream G650. So kind of a full circle career for me, for sure. Pleasure to be here.
Barry.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me fine. My apologies that I'm not there in person. I got up yesterday morning with every intention of flying down to Daytona Beach, but unfortunately I have bronchitis. So I'm kind of housebound at the moment, taking antibiotics and trying to get better. But I'm really glad that I could join you by the video. So I'm Barry Eccleston. I'm retired now. As my old boss used to say, I've been around. I spent over 50 years in the aerospace business. Born in the UK, went to Loughborough University in the UK, got an aeronautical engineering degree, joined Rolls-Royce in the airplane engines business, spent 29 years with Rolls-Royce in the engines business. And then I decided to take a chance and move out of Rolls-Royce, find out, is there really life after Rolls-Royce? And there was, it was Fairchild Dornier. We were in the regional jet business, or at least we were, until 9/11 came along and the business went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I learned a lot about bankruptcy, which was educational, but not to be recommended. After that, I joined with Honeywell, looking after Honeywell in Europe, based in Paris. I thought I can do that. And then I've been there about a year, and the boss moved me to Phoenix to run the Honeywell engines business. I learned a lot about program management at Honeywell. That's really important, guys. Program management is an incredibly valuable management tool. And then Airbus called up. Airbus said, we want you to come and look after Airbus here in North America, based at Dulles Airport. I joined up in 2005, signed up for 5 years, and then planned to retire. I stayed for 12 and a half years because I had the best job in the business, looking after Airbus business in North America and doing it 4,000 miles away from my boss. Since I retired, I try and stay involved a little bit in the industry. The problem actually is not getting too much involved, because I really need time for what I want to do and what my wife wants to do. But I do board work at Wizz Air, an ultra low cost carrier in Europe. And I'm currently consulting with a startup company called Jet Zero, who is trying to launch a blended wing body commercial airliner that would be 40 to 50% more fuel efficient than today's airplanes. It's really exciting. Anyway, that's my story. More later.
All right, Barry, you're doing a great job. So we're going to continue with you.
Oh, okay.
Two-part question. So you have an audience of college students here. What was the most important thing you learned in college? And what didn't you learn that you wish you had?
I went to college when I was 18, having obviously lived at home all that time. When I got to college, the first thing I discovered was being myself. What do I mean by that? Well, at home, I'd been very much a sort of a mum and dad sort of kid. But when I got to college, I really learnt who I was and became myself. And then more importantly from that, I began to understand what was driving me, what gets me out of bed in the morning. I use that phrase a lot, by the way, when I do mentoring. What gets you out of bed in the morning? And one of the first things I did at college was I figured out that was aviation, airplanes, travel. I figured out that was really what motivated me when I got up every day. I think the second part question was, what else could I have learned? There's probably two or three things that in retrospect, I wish my college had taught me more effectively. One is the art of communication. If you're going to succeed in business, this is especially important for the O'Malley students. If you're going to succeed in business, you really need to have really good communication skills. And I trained as an engineer, and engineers generally, at least in the UK, do not have good communication skills. In fact, I go over to my old alma mater and I talk to them about that very subject. The second thing is business skills. Of course, at O'Malley, you learn that anyway. As an engineer, I didn't learn that. I had to learn that myself, if you like, the hard way. And then the third and probably most important thing was I wish that my college had been more proactive in helping me develop my self-confidence. It took me a long while, probably after I'd left college and got into industry, to realize, hey, I can actually do this stuff and develop my own self-confidence myself. So those are three things I wish I'd had a bit more work done on me at college.
Thank you. Candace, what did you learn that was best and what do you wish you learned?
So what I learned, and kind of the hard way, was discipline and time management. You know, kind of to Barry's point, when you're at home, there's a lot of structure that's put around you, and then you go off and you're on your own, and maybe you don't have as much respect for all that structure that you got at home, but you soon learn how important it is. And you know, it's kind of ironic because I got a liberal arts degree in communications, right? So I had lots of debate and communication type training, but where I wish I had gotten more training was on the business side of things. You know, I wish I had weaved some business courses into my degree, because I certainly learned those throughout my career. And I think regardless of what you do in aviation, that business acumen is really important. So kudos to all of you that are here at the business school. It'll serve you well.
All right, Ravi, what was most valuable and what did you miss it?
I'll echo much of what Barry and Candace have already said. I think the most important thing for me at Embry-Riddle in Arizona was I found my passion for aviation. We talked about this a little earlier today, but I think whatever it is you end up doing, you didn't start there. You started off with something. And that something has to motivate you. It has to, like Barry said, it has to get you out of bed. And find that thing that you do and you care about, you can be better than everybody else in the world. And then you go figure out what the next step and the next step is after that. And so for me, Embry-Riddle kind of helped me find that passion was around aviation. And much of what both of you said already, at least then, we didn't teach a lot of soft skills in college and in high school and any other places. We really taught, you know, how do you do this very specific step-by-step process, right? And that's really good to get you started in something, but you learn later in life to be an effective leader and lead large organizations. you don't do so much yourself. You have to inspire people. You have to motivate people. You have to get them pulling in the same direction for all the same reasons. And at least back then, we didn't do a very good job of teaching that or even talking about it to recognize that that's an important skill. And you can't just follow a checklist that you learn in a book and you can't take tests on it. I like to think now we're probably more aware of how important that is. And I know in our business, and I imagine many others, when we're talking to new people to bring them into the organization and leadership roles, that's the thing we're screening for. The hard skills almost don't matter. We're looking a lot more at people that can inspire people and drive them in the same direction.
So you started the story, Candace, about how you made a hard right turn.
Yep.
So what attracted you to going and working in the field of aviation business? And then looking out at them, what is the most exciting prospect? Why should they want to work at aviation business?
Oh, we're going to start sounding a little bit like a broken record. You know, I learned to fly as a hobby, thinking it would just be a hobby for me. And I was so energized and so passionate about it that it was really all I wanted to do. And so initially I thought, well, I'm this newfound, love of aviation. I'm going to find a graphic design position for an aviation company. But by the time I had finished my instrument rating, I was totally hooked, and I knew that that was not going to be enough, that I really wanted to fly for a living. And, I had some challenges. I don't have good vision. And so I knew I was never going to the airlines. But that did not deter me at all. And then I think there's some inherent entrepreneurial spirit with me that flying in itself wasn't enough, that I needed to have a bigger impact. And I think I found that ability through the business portion of it. And a little bit of curiosity, right, had me just looking left and right for opportunities to grow and learn more and be challenged. And those were both in the technical aspects of flying bigger, more complicated airplanes all around the world, and in the business sector of the roles that I aspired for.
So what's the most exciting thing going forward, do you think, for careers in aviation business?
I just think the huge opportunities. I just think there's a lot of different things you can do for all different types of companies. Space industry, and then air vehicles. I mean, it's so much richer in opportunities and potential today than it was when I got involved. I think, you have this enormous blank canvas, and figure out where your passion is and what energizes you. And I think you can have impact in so many different areas.
Barry, what attracted you to this world of aviation business, and what do you see as the most exciting things on the horizon?
I'm going to give you what sounds like a rather romanticized view of life, but bear with me. As a kid growing up in the UK, I was always attracted to airplanes. First of all, when you get up in an airplane, you're in the sky, you look down, you get a totally different perspective of the world and people, and it just sort of totally frees the mind of just hanging around on the ground. Secondly, aeroplanes represented travel. That's to say, going to see different places, meet different cultures, explore different geographies, all of which appeal to me greatly, which sounds a bit romantic. But then I got to college and I thought, well, actually, I can be involved in that. And I'm going to give you a quote here, which summarizes what I felt at the time. This is not my quote, this is somebody else's. Quote, "Perhaps I'm prejudiced, but to me, it seems like no other phase of modern progress contrives to maintain such a brimming measure of romance and beauty, coupled with utility, as does aviation." Actually, that was a quote from Amelia Earhart in, I think, 1932. She was giving a speech at a college at the time. That captured everything I felt about aviation, utility, romance, beauty, all of that. But not only that, I graduated in 1969. What an inspirational year that was if you're in the airplane or aviation business. The first flight of the 747, first flight of the Concorde. These days, Concorde's almost forgotten. 747 is being forgotten. Also, of course, Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. All these things happened the year I graduated. What an inspirational year. And I found all that really inspirational for me, but more importantly, it was all stuff that people said it can't be done. I love it when people say it can't be done. Oh yeah, just let's show you. And to me, that's what sort of driven a lot of my passion for aviation, because a lot of it people said it can't be done. And then we proved that it could be. Your second part of the question, Shannon, is actually a lot more difficult. It's not that we are without the same inspiration and passion. As Candace says, we have this blank canvas, you name it, supersonics, hypersonics, eVTOL, space, commercial space, new airplane programs, well, some of them anyway. Lots of the same opportunities, but on the other side of the coin, it appears to me that our industry's single biggest challenge is to marry those continuing opportunities with the new expectations of the graduates of today. The different generational expectations, different views of where you want to be, do you want to make money or whatever. In fact, I think the single biggest challenge for the industry right now is finding that same degree of motivated, inspired, committed workforce. Just not to say that your folks aren't. I'm sure they all are. That's why they're at Embry-Riddle. Anybody who's at Embry-Riddle is already on the right track. But we need a lot more like that, and it seems to be rather challenging to find them. But no, all the same inspiration is there, it's just in different things. I'm a great, last comment, I'm a great believer in having a flag to rally around. And in my career, the flag has always been new airplane programs, new engine programs. There's nothing so thrilling as standing on the side of the tarmac when the airplane takes off for the first time, the first flight of a new program. It's so unifying, it's so energizing. We don't get that often too often these days, but there's still lots of great stuff going on out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. All right, Ravi.
So at Cirrus, we talk about aviation as a way to make you live your life different, better. We talk about not necessarily just the airplane as a vehicle, but the things you do with it. And I think that message is really taking hold in a lot of places. And we think about what's happening in eVTOL and space and hypersonics and all that. It's less about the vehicle. We're kind of the people behind the scenes. What we're really appealing to is a broad market of people that are thinking about ways they want to live their life differently. Think about all the businesses that are growing in all the different places there. And the people need to be there to inspire and lead and find customers and find markets and find opportunities. So if we kind of behind the scenes can keep finding better ways to help them do that, help them live their life, help them have a better life, that's what keeps this thing growing. And so when you look at all the things that are changing now, all these different people with all these different needs, we're getting a lot more stratified and a lot more niche-y, if you will. So that's why a thing like eVTOL exists now, is because we figured out that driving a car from this side of town to that side of town is not the best way to spend my time. What if I can fly above it? What if I can do it on an economic basis that makes sense for a really broad audience? So to me, it's more that the broad economy is evolving so much that creates an enormous opportunity for aviation to play a bigger part. And there's a giant need for us to grow as an industry and meet all these different needs, because the opportunity is really the biggest it's ever been, and it's probably only going to get bigger.
I'm going to ask you to step back in your history a little bit now. Talk to us about your first leadership position, and what were some of the unique challenges, and what did you learn from it that you've brought forward to today?
Yeah, good one. So when I was at Embry-Riddle, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do in life, and I thought I wanted to be an airline pilot. And then I met this recruiter from the Marines who convinced me of other things, right? And so I decided that that's it. I want to go join the military. And in the Prescott campus, we had a really robust Air Force ROTC program, really robust Army ROTC program. but there was really nothing for, that handful of us, less than 10, that thought about a career in the Marines. And so we built a club, we call it the Semper Fi Club. And the club needed a leader, and I guess I don't know, volunteered, voluntold, not sure exactly how it all shook out, but I ended up being the first president of the club that we stood up there. And I didn't really know what I had signed up for, right? And so now we've got this great interest. We've got a lot of folks that are sharing that interest. And of course, we got to be better than the Army and the Air Force, because we're the Marines. We've got to be better, even though there's like 7 of us and we don't really know what we're doing. But we learned a lot from that, from working together to try to figure out what is our place, right? And a lot of these things, so we talk about leadership and your role in leadership, is you got to know what your purpose is, right? And it can be a lot of different things, but once you know that, everybody can align around that, then you start moving in the same direction and everything kind of starts to fall in place. So I guess to answer your question, probably the most important thing in there is figuring out what we wanted to be when we grew up. And then you can figure out what all the different things are you have to do to get there.
The management of the leadership.
That's right. That's right.
Purpose is big. All right, Candace, your first foray into leadership, challenges, and what did you learn that has served you well?
So I think it was when I started the charter company, because it was just me. And so you didn't have to inspire anybody to come along with you, because you were doing all the work and making all the magic happen and everything. But as the company grew and I found myself with employees, I was really unprepared for people managing. And I just figured if these people came to work with me, that they inherently knew what we were trying to achieve and what the end goal and outcome should look like. And yeah, that was a steep learning curve, but very valuable, and never forgot those initial lessons for sure.
I like that. Barry, first foray into leadership.
As you and I have talked before, Shannon, I don't like telling one-I-was stories about myself, so I try and avoid that. But on the other hand, if you're going to be a mentor, then telling one-I-was stories is useful. As I often say to a lot of students, you learn from the mistakes of others like me, because you really don't have time to make them all yourself. So here's my when-I-was story for this particular question. I'd spent several years of my career, first of all as an engineer, and then as a customer person, sales and marketing, customer support. And then I was asked by Rolls-Royce to go to Canada to run Rolls-Royce in Canada, which is basically a series of operational roles, six different factories doing 6 different things, from airplane MRO to engine development to power generation. And I basically was asked to take care of all these various factories. Very, very much an operational role, for which I had absolutely no background or training, of course. And I very quickly learned that this was a different world, a very different world, and a world in which you have to face up to the fact that, picking up Candace's point, I always assumed everybody had the same strengths and motivations that I did. Quickly learned, no, they didn't. In fact, some of them quite the opposite. And I was very slow to recognize that. So I guess the short answer to the question is, you have to learn how to make the tough decisions and make them very quickly. Everybody else around you knows the tough decisions that have to be made. And if you as the boss are not seen to be making those decisions, you lose their respect and credibility. So don't shy away from the tough decisions and make them quickly.
That's a really good one. All right, so I'll stay with you for a moment, Barry. What do you anticipate be the next round of super big, hairy, audacious opportunities and challenges are going to be?
The biggest challenge facing the aerospace industry right now is one we referred to earlier on, one that you're very much involved with, which is replacing the experienced, skilled, motivated, dedicated workforce, many of whom are now on the beach or playing golf, and following the post-COVID Great Resignation. Many companies are finding it very difficult to replace that skilled workforce, especially at the tier 2 or 3 or even tier 4 level. Whilst at the same time, there's ever increasing demand on the industry to deliver more product, whether it's defense equipment for the numerous conflicts around the world, or whether it's building up more commercial airplanes to replace the old ones. There's huge demand, but we are failing to satisfy that because we can't get sufficient skilled workforce. You guys are at the forefront of satisfying that challenge, thankfully. And all of you in the room, who I can't see, thank you very much for expressing your interest in coming into our industry, because we sure as hell need all the good people we can get right now. But to Shannon's question about big, hairy, audacious goals, we were referred earlier on, there's lots of stuff out there. eVTOL. Actually, personally, I'm not a great believer in eVTOL. I'll come back to that in a minute. But there are many, many, many projects out there in eVTOL, and at least 2 or 3 of them will actually survive and provide some very different role in our industry. There's clearly the environmental challenge. We, the industry, like it or not, are thrust into the spotlight with satisfying the emissions challenge. And we all need to be a lot more proactive as an industry, together with our governments, together with the energy companies, in solving the emissions issue. The program I'm working on with Jet Zero, as I mentioned before, a blended wing body aeroplane, by definition, the aerodynamics of the aeroplane give you about a 40% improvement over today's tube and wing designs, like a 767, for example. These, to me, these are the big, hairy, audacious goals, just the same as we've always had. But the focus, the approach is different these days, in that it's to satisfy emissions rather than to go further, faster, higher. eVTOL is to satisfy a new marketplace. Space clearly is higher, faster, etc. And commercial space is clearly a rapidly developing area where I would encourage all of you to look at. So yeah, lots of stuff out there, but the challenge seems to be to find to find people with the same generational expectations that perhaps the people on this panel grew up with.
I would want to challenge you in person that maybe we need to change our expectations, but we'll have that conversation when you're here in the spring.
Happily.
Ravi, what are you thinking for big, audacious goals and opportunities?
I think very spot on, especially with the environmental piece. And I say that because when I came into aviation, environment just wasn't something that we spoke about. It wasn't that we didn't care. It just wasn't a thing that was front of mind. But time has gone on, we've learned things, and we know what the impact of fossil fuels and hydrocarbons have on our environment. And we have yet to solve that. So there's other places that we're doing things better, where we're using less of it, but we're still one of the biggest consumers in the world of it. And there's no obvious immediate replacement for that. So while there's this giant demand for all these other things that we can do in aviation, there's not a really good answer to say, how can we do that in a way that's less impactful to the environment? And you don't have to look very far to see some of the things, especially what we're happening in Europe right now. They ban flights that you can cover in a train. 100 low lead or leaded fuels are going away in a lot of places in Europe and the US too. So it's not just a thing that we talk about, it's going to become a regulatory item that's going to prevent us from doing things the way we do things now. And so we're going to have to think about better ways to do it. And one of the biggest challenges is, so far, everything that we can see, if you do it in a way that doesn't have the same impact on the environment, you take a pretty significant step backwards in terms of performance or outcome for the end user. And so the people that are paying for this, the funding mechanism for all this, they're probably not going to accept a step backwards at a higher price. And so to solve this thing, the economics have to solve at the end of the day. And so the challenge for the industry, in my mind, I think the challenge of our time, is how do we move people efficiently with aircraft in a way that doesn't hurt the environment?
I like it. Candace, you want to add and maybe?
So I think this is definitely true for business aviation. I'll kind of go out on a limb a little bit, and this may challenge Barry a bit in his position, but what got us here won't get us there where we need to go in the future. And it's absolutely true for business aviation. I think on the environmental sustainability, the workforce development, and just what the workforce is looking for in our industries. I think we fundamentally have to change how we look at those things.
Diversity.
Yeah, we are so far behind. We're so far behind.
I knew that one. All right, I'm going to change and ask a few fun questions, then we'll come back to a serious one. So, which of my favorite fun questions do I want to lead with? All right, Barry, what's your favorite pastime now that you're supposedly retired?
Flying my little aeroplane.
This is going to be a ridiculous question.
Well, all right, so I read an interview with Barry once that said after he retired, he actually had to go relearn to fly.
That's true. Yeah, so it's a good point, Shannon. Before I retired, I was flying about 5 hours a year. Now, all of you know that is not just ridiculous, it's actually dangerous. So the first thing I did when I retired was I went and got my instrument rating. And now I fly about 75 to 100 hours a year. I've got a little Cirrus, you'll be pleased to hear, Ravi, and I was intending to fly it down yesterday, but didn't get to do that. And that's, I absolutely love that. I really do.
Great. Candace?
So I feel very fortunate because my husband built us a Lancer Legacy, and my favorite pastime is to take that flying anywhere.
Pastime?
Well, I hate to sound like an echo chamber here, but we are in aviation school. We all love to fly. I'll just say one slight difference is I've got a great opportunity working for an aerospace company that has a lot of airplanes. And so the only slight modification I'd say is I love traveling with my family, and so much so that I even brought my daughter here on this trip with us. So awesome.
Okay, we're going to come back to Barry. Barry, if you could have any one talent or skill that you don't have, what would it be?
Doing a better instrument approach.
Well, I would say why, but that one's pretty self-explanatory.
But I suspect that wasn't really a question. I suppose I don't often think about it, but I suppose if I could play a musical instrument, that sometimes would feel like it would be a good idea.
I like that. Candace?
Does it have to be like work business
No,
related?
no.
Oh,
Talent, skill, what do you want to do? This is Candace personal.
I would love to be a good golfer.
Oh. I like it.
Yeah.
All right, talent or skill?
I'll say this, where I said a moment ago, I know how important soft skills are, and I wish I was better at those.
So now we'll go back to one of the harder questions before I give the floor to you guys. So this question is, what do you think is the most important attribute of an effective leader? And I'll start with you, Ravi, because we were just here.
Okay, so I'll say the thing that I think I could probably be better at, that soft skills. And I say, you think about IQ and EQ. IQ is a thing that we measure. There's science behind it, and it's pretty linear. That kind of makes sense if you're talking about IQ. EQ is almost exactly the opposite. I would argue it's significantly more important. There's a lot of research that shows people with incredibly high IQs that are not successful in the traditional sense. But people with moderate to average IQs with very high EQ capability tend to be the most successful people out there. And so I think understanding that is the first step, and then getting better at it's pretty hard. There's a couple elements to it. It's understanding other people and what they think and what they feel and how they react to certain things. And then I think equally important is understanding yourself and how people perceive you and how you perceive other people. And when you're leading people, when you're communicating with people, you have to be speaking their language. You have to communicate in a way that they understand it. I can talk all day in my language and things that make a lot of sense to me, but if my audience doesn't understand what I'm saying, I'm wasting my time. And so I would say in my personal leadership journey, I've come to understand the importance of that. I think the next big step is getting better at actually executing on that and making sure that that's front of mind when you're having the conversations that feel a little bit, routine. Like, we're going to talk about what we're going to do in our business this day, this week, this month. I think it's important in those times. It's a lot less about what you say. It's about how you say it to the audience. And that's hard to remember in the moment when you're doing these things, because you revert back to who you are.
That's huge. And it's a challenge.
It is hard.
Characteristics of most effective leaders.
So I'm going to tag on to Ravi. Empathy, first and foremost. And a close second to that is curiosity and empathy for all the reasons that Ravi described. I think that, you got to meet people where they are and have that space to really walk in their shoes a little bit.
Barry?
If we had more time, I've got a list of about 12 things, each one of which merits its own discussion. But I'll summarize it by saying, for me personally, I've always lived by sort of three tenets. One is teamwork, one is results, and one is leadership. Now, of course, you say, well, leadership's obvious. That was what the question was about. But the first thing to do when you're an effective leader is actually step up to be the leader. How many times, I'm asking your students here rhetorically, how many times has there been you've been in a situation where someone has needed to step up and be a leader, and you had the chance to do that? And maybe you did, and maybe you didn't. But if you want to be an effective leader, you better be stepping up to be that leader. You may work or you may not, but just the simple fact of stepping up to be the leader in a situation where that is demanded shows that you have potential leadership skills. Second thing is teamwork. It's been said many, many times that Neil Armstrong didn't go to the moon on his own. That's obvious, but the point being that, of course, nothing at all happens without teamwork. Not in our industry, not in any industry. Not only that, but it's tremendously satisfying to work on a winning team. Find yourself a winning team. It may not be a very big thing, but if it's a winning team, you get a huge amount of satisfaction, not to mention learning teamwork skills. Then the third thing is you better get results. At the end of the day, your boss and his boss, or his or her boss, is looking at what you're doing and saying, okay, that's all great. This leadership stuff's terrific and the team working really well, but are they actually getting any results? Are they getting the results that we want them to get? Are they exceeding results? The three things I've lived by are teamwork, leadership, and results. However, I'm not going to finish there because there's so many other things that are really important, and in no particular order. Be humble. How many times have you heard people talk about, I did this, I did that, I did the other? It's me, or whatever. Please don't do that. Please be humble and give credit to the team when it's due, and take responsibility when it doesn't work on behalf of the team. Be very high integrity. As my mother used to say, you don't want to be reading about this stuff in the newspaper tomorrow morning, do you, Barry? So make sure that you have a very high integrity to everything that you do. Take risks, but also learn how to manage those risks. If you're gonna have a risky plan, you better have some risk management in the plan. Program management, I've always found, is a great skill for a leader to have because it gives you an appreciation of so many different things that go into a project. And finally, I've got to finish at some point. Finally, mentor people who want your job and deserve to have your job, and people will respect you for that. So that's just some of my thoughts.
Yeah, one thing, of course, don't wait for the title to be a leader. You can demonstrate all of these skills in whatever role you're sitting in. Leadership comes from all seats.
All right, I've got one last question, but I don't want to ask it until I give the audience a chance to ask questions. So, questions from the audience.
About soft skills and communication, and this can go to all of you. What do you use to help develop your soft skills? Like what you've read, how do you basically, like with all the success, how do you keep yourself from getting a big head? You know, how do you keep yourself grounded with all of your success? Thank you.
Who wants to
I'll
tackle?
start. I think to Barry's point, humility. I think the best leaders show up with a strong dose of humility and realize who's really making all the magic happen, and giving that credit to the team and being there to support, and as a servant leader really to raise up that team allow them to thrive and achieve, the best results.
I also know Candace actually seeks out and reads,
Uh,
and I know that because she brought me a book this morning, right? So she's actually someone who's always looking to build her repertoire of knowledge.
Yeah.
I've seen that firsthand.
Yeah.
Barry, how do you keep building the skill set?
I'm going to need to ask you to repeat or paraphrase the question, please, Shannon. I didn't catch it all. Sorry.
No, that's okay. The microphone's up here, so it would be a hard yell. The question was, given your success, how do you continue to improve your communication skills, your business skills, and at some point not let it go to your head when you are good at it?
Never stop learning. Throughout your entire time at college, your entire career, and even when you've retired, just never stop learning. And in my particular case, I've taken a board job at an airline. Now, I had worked with airlines for 40 years, but I had never actually worked for an airline. And I discovered that what an airline does is actually very different from what an airplane manufacturer does, believe it or not. And I've learned a huge amount by being on the board of an airline. The flying of aeroplanes, this is very simple, really. Once a year, I try and find some new aviation adventure, not just me, but we've got bunch of other guys that we do it with. So like going to get my seaplane rating, or going to get my tail dragger rating, or whatever, just some new aviation experience. So the answer is never stop learning.
So I read a story once written by an SR-71 pilot who talked about, you got this great view from the top of the world looking out the window, but the second you look out the window, the airplane will let you know, right? Because you got to be focused the entire time. I've had that same experience in business where every time I thought, hey, I've accomplished something here and I should be proud of it, I'm the SR-71 pilot looking out the window, and the business will come back and remind me that I haven't really accomplished very much. And I need to keep my eyes and my hands on the controls. So I will say that if you get proud of yourself, it won't last long, because the world will let you know that you've got things you can continue to improve on. At least that's been my experience so far. And in terms of learning soft skills, I think that's a little bit more challenging than learning hard skills, just to be blunt. I mean, there's plenty of good literature out there and all that. I think that the approach I have taken is I look for people in my life who I think are very good at that. And I look at the things that they do that are different than what I gravitate towards naturally. And I look at different scenarios where I see different kinds of interactions, different kinds of skills. And nobody's perfect at this, but there are people that are really good. And you probably know who they are because they're the natural leaders. And kind of what Candace said, it's not necessarily about a title or position. They're the people that others gravitate towards for a thing. And so once you know who those people are, I know everybody here can imagine off the top of their head at least a handful of folks that fit that description. Just watch what they do and emulate the things that you like and the things that you say they could have been better about that. Then maybe look at somebody else in that circle of folks that you think is really good. And that's, again, this is hard, but I think life is your best place to learn that. It's going to be a little bit hard to learn it in a book. And maybe that's why certainly when I was going through college, that they didn't teach it, because there's not really a great way to teach that. Or if there is, I don't know what it is.
Can I add something to that? Because I think that's fantastic. And when you find those people who you really admire, and especially if you work with them and interact with them, ask them for feedback. Because getting feedback on how you show up in those situations, in those interactions, those are great learning moments. And so, oftentimes people won't feel like they can give you feedback, but if you ask for it, what a great learning opportunity for you.
What is the biggest regret in your career, if any, and what you learned from it?
Barry, the question is, what has been the biggest regret in your career, and what did you learn from it?
Oh wow, there's so many. No, seriously. I guess my biggest, if I was to sort of boil it all down, my biggest regret was not thinking big at times when I should have been thinking big. There's many examples of that, whether it's launching a new program or getting involved in a new program. I should have thought bigger, had big, hairy, audacious goals. Perhaps I was feeling more constrained by how much money do we have, and I can't spend all that money, and we can't do that anyway. So back to my point about, I love it when people say it can't be done, but as a leader, you're called upon to make balanced decisions, and sometimes you can't do all that because you don't have the money, you don't have the people, you don't have the timetable, whatever. But I do regret, on many occasions, not having thought bigger about making this particular thing happen, because yes, okay, it might be challenging right now, but in the long run, is the right thing to do.
Other? Candace? Ravi?
Sure, I'll take a stab at this one. I don't know if I would use the term regret, but I would say there's a lot of things that, given what I know now, I might have done differently. And I'd say most of that has to do with people, right? So maybe I overestimated or underestimated somebody. And that one, I don't know what the lesson learned is, other than about that specific person, that I learned that their skill set was different than what I thought it was. Or I thought we were better aligned, or I thought we had a better understanding, to your point, that we're all going the same direction. And it was clear in my mind what I was saying, but it was pretty different to somebody else. And so I don't know if I would say I regret that. I would say that I learned about that person and their communication style and made that a point. When I interact with this person next time, I'm going to find a different way to do it. Maybe come back to something that we talked about just a moment ago, and that's, how do you learn from this? How do you get better at this skill set? I would say a lot of it is self-reflection after the fact. So once you have this interaction that didn't go the way you wanted it to, I step back and, I think the natural human thing, and certainly my nature, is to say, well, why didn't that person understand what I said? I was really clear. I think that's the wrong question. I think the right question is, what should I have said or done differently to make sure that we were on the same page on this thing? Because I can't necessarily change somebody else, but I can change the way that I interact with people.
I don't have any regrets per se either, but kind of to Ravi's point, in that leadership role, there definitely was a point where I'd had a lot of positive impact and able to influence and a lot of effective change in an organization, but I could only take it so far. And that self-realization that culturally there was no more room for me, that took me a little bit of time to figure that out and know when it was time to go. Still very proud of what I accomplished while I was there, but slow to realize that's as far as you were going to be able to take it.
You each have touched on the growing gap in aviation between the established senior leader roles and new kids on the block. And it's obviously a two-way road to bridge that gap. But I was just curious, from your perspective, what can the new generation do to help ease that and carry this new age in aviation?
Repeating the question back just so you can hear it, Barry. The comment is, we've commented on the gap between the more seasoned professionals and the new kids on the block, as you said it. The question was, what can the current generation do to bridge this gap and move things forward?
So I'll take a stab at that. And I think there's a lot of, at least from my perspective, of people are not the same as me and people that came in my time. And instead of lamenting that, we probably need to embrace that and understand what drives a new kid on the block. And I think as the new kid on the block, and that's probably most of us in class here, is think about what it is you want to do and how you're going to solve problems of tomorrow. And so I think when you can articulate really like an end-to-end solution of, it's not just a problem, it's an opportunity, and here's the way that we're going to go solve this better, faster, different than anybody out there. I think that gives you a chance to get into things, get into projects and the programs that need your mind and your fresh perspective on how to handle those things. And a lot of stuff, the world's changing fast, right? It's like I said a moment ago, when I came into aviation, environment wasn't a talking point. Now it's the only thing we talk about. And Gibbs and I were just at NBAA a couple weeks back, and the first thing, the middle thing, the last thing we talked about is environment. That is the thing that's going to drive aviation in the future. And so if you come into that, into this industry with that as your perspective, the more senior folks that are having to figure out what that means are probably not going to be as equipped as you, who this is something that is part of the way that you're learning coming through college. So I think those are the kind of places you can say, there's a fresh perspective, there's a fresh thing that I understand the consumers care about, and we've got a way to solve that. I think that's something you can do to demonstrate your value right off the bat.
Good answer.
Oh, that's a good answer.
All right, I'll ask the last question. This will be it. If you could give your younger self advice, what would it be? Barry, what's the advice you would give your younger self besides think big?
Oh, that was my answer. You just took my answer. Think big and have confidence in yourself. No, I mean that truly is my answer. But let me come back to the earlier question. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your flow here, Shannon. I think it's important. So the question of how can we bridge the difference or the gap between today's new generation, the people who are taking over the mantle of the industry, versus us old guys. The first action is actually on me. It's on us old guys to learn, to understand. I'm trying to understand what the motivations are of the current generation. For example, when I joined Rolls-Royce, the expectation back then was that you join Rolls-Royce and you stay there man and boy, and your kids join Rolls-Royce and do the same thing. Clearly, that is not the expectation of today's generation. And indeed, the biggest problem in the industry is we get people in, we train them up. Sometimes that can take 6, 12, 24 months. And then after 2 or 3 months on a real job, these people leave because they maybe aren't motivated by what we're doing, or they got a better payoff around the corner, or whatever. We just, I'm still struggling, not struggling, but I'm trying to understand the motivations. So the first action is on me to understand the motivations of the new generation. But then secondly, my answer to the question is find a flag to rally around. I don't know if it's a new airplane program. It certainly needs to be the environmental challenge that we're all facing together today. Whatever the challenge is, find a common challenge, find a flag to rally around, and bring in people who want to rally around that flag and make the team that's going to take that hill and plant that flag on top of it. So I'm sorry, I interrupted your flow, but that was my answer to the previous question. The answer to your most recent question, think big.
Yeah, plant a flag's pretty good too. All right, Candace, advice to your younger self.
This question was asked of me in a class earlier today, and be bold and brave. Kind of to Barry's point, I wish I had a bigger picture and had been a bit bolder and braver as my younger self. And I will add a little bit to your question too, and I think it's really good. I think the fact that you're asking the question means that there is some willingness to help us to bridge that gap. And I think if you're willing to take that role, assume good intentions, and just help us learn and understand, could be very valuable.
Advice to your younger self?
I would say believe in yourself, because you are stronger and more capable than you know when you're sitting here today. And when you look back later on, you'll be impressed with all the things that you've been able to accomplish in your life that were harder and more daunting than you could imagine when you're sitting today.
I like to invite everyone who's here to stay. In addition to the 2 executives and residents, I have multiple members of industry from our college's College Philanthropy Council here, who will be staying for a quick reception and refreshment. So please stay and chat and interact with them, learn from them. But beyond that, let's give our panel a round of applause. Thank you for that.
May I please ask your perspective about the thin line which differentiates people if they are on the right track, people like successful people who are going to the later success. Thin line, your perspective about people who are becoming a successful in their career or whichever field they are in, or people because of which they're delaying their success? What could be done?
I'm sure I understand the question.
Let's take the question out offline. It might be easier to answer one-on-one. Can
Okay.
we do that?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Barry. I appreciate your time. I hope you're feeling better soon.
Thank you very much, and good luck to everybody there. Enjoy the rest of the homecoming, and I'll see you guys in the spring, hopefully. Bye now.
Absolutely.
Bye, Barry.
Take care.
Hi, Barry.
All right. Thank you all. Now